To me, I think it's over. I don't want to deal with them anymore. They're scum. You know what scum is? They're scum. They're sick people. They're led by sick people. And they're vicious, violent people. And if they had a nuclear weapon, they'd use it. As far as I'm concerned, it's over.
Moments ago, President Trump declaring the ceasefire with Iran is over. His words, and that he doesn't want to deal with them at all.
Retired Navy captain and former Pentagon official Brent Sadler is here to react. Good morning to you, sir. So the question is there still room for negotiations, or should we take the president at his word? Is the ceasefire really over? What is your reaction to what the president just said?
Well, it's, I think, inevitable given the nature of the regime that we're dealing with, because it hasn't really changed. Despite the best of compellence and military and some of the concessions, or at least the offering of concessions in this MOU, but both can be true. You can continue on with negotiations at the same time that you're involved in active hostilities. It's happened numerous times throughout human history and even in the modern era. So why not here, especially with the group that only understands brute force, to be compelled to actually make necessary concessions or to enter in a truthful way any type of agreement to end the fighting. So the president has a spectrum of options with the military forces that he has right now. And boots on the ground of a conventional kind of invasion is not something or an option that appears to have ever been put on the table. But as there had been talk about occupying Karg Island, there's also the adequate forces to occupy Bandar Abbas, which is the location from which the Iranians are exercising their threat to shipping. It also is a site where there has been widespread discontent with the regime in the past, and even most recently back in January. So perhaps that's the type of spark on the tinder that's the Iranian populace to trigger a more widespread kind of uprising that would take the country back without having to put boots on the ground or continue with the strikes that you're seeing. The episodic back and forth, we attack, the Iranians basically sue for return to negotiations, the attacks stop, and then they have another provocation. That cycle is, I think, dead, and I think rightfully so. So hopefully these attacks that we're seeing now continue to bring the pain to the IRGC and certainly degrade any remaining military capacity to threaten shipping in the Strait of Hormuz.
Brent, right now on our screen, we are watching the various NATO leaders walk across the stage, shake hands, including with head of NATO, Mark Rutte. And that begs the question. President Trump and NATO leaders are all in a room together. We're anticipating the family photo soon. They're going to be talking. Do you think, in light of the president's comments just moments ago, that we could finally get the bulk of NATO to help us in the war and what looks like the resumption of hostilities with Iran?
I think so. There's certainly a compelling case from the very beginning. Iran is a threat to NATO. NATO, in fact, in the late 90s all the way through until recent time, Iran was always listed as a threat. It was the rationale for putting Aegis ashore missile defense batteries in Poland and Romania, and also the additional deployment of Aegis destroyers to Rota, Spain, back in the 2012 to 15 timeframe. So it's an acknowledged threat, and I think NATO, perhaps now, given the economic pain, but also the nature of the fighting right now, they've got military forces that have moved in, or at least nearby, mine clearance vessels most notably, to actively take a more proactive role in at least reopening or securing the shipping routes. To include the Bab el-Mandeb, the Houthis still remain a proxy, an active proxy of Iran.
So shortly before U.S. military retaliation last night, the Treasury Department announced it was revoking sanction waivers that have allowed Iran to sell oil. That's a big deal, and it's something that's not going to make Iran very happy this morning.
Well, this is very much in line with the MOU. The Iranians have failed on their side. Again, it's an MOU, so there's no obligations, but there is a cause and reaction. The reaction is removing any of those waivers, which effectively reinstates the blockade. At least right now, it's the financial aspect of that blockade on Iranian exports of petroleum. The next will be the U.S. Navy enforcing the physical blockade.
All of these questions involving oil also need to be viewed through the lens of the American public. the people who buy gas and who have to pay a lot of money for said gas, especially with the midterms upon us. Brent, do you know, has enough oil been able to get out of the strait during the past few weeks in order to stave off a price spike now, as Carly and you discussed, that the U.S. has revoked those sanctions?
Yeah. Well, on the political question on here, I mean, elections in November for midterms, typically the seasonal spike in oil prices starts going down and the trend lines will be in the right direction, all things being equal, just driven by seasonal demands. So I think the presidents and certainly the empire, the Republicans will be fine if all things were equal. But the other side of it is, and the dissolution of OPEC, you know, UAE departed on May 1 because they were being constrained on output that they could put through pipelines to bypass the Strait of Hormuz. So it's not that there's a lack of petroleum on the market or its ability to get out of wherever it's located, most certainly the Strait of Hormuz. So I think the pressures, the fundamentals are all pushing in the direction based on supply and demand, that there's enough oil in other places and OPEC is loosening its grip on constraining production, that you're going to see the prices come down. Whether they go down to $60 or $50 or $40, that's really the question, but they will go down, even though right now they're spiking into the $70 range again.
During this ceasefire, U.S. intelligence reported that Iran was able to rebuild its military and industrial base, particularly its drone and missile manufacturing capabilities, much faster than expected. How concerned should we be about this?
Well, we need to listen to and learn from the Ukrainian experience, and it should not surprise anyone that reconstituting the ability to build a lot of these drones is something that can happen in a matter of weeks. And clearly, there's going to have to be a new set of targets that the military goes after if the president decides to take the pain to include reattacking the Iranian defense industrial base. I think top of that list, not necessarily the drones, will probably be their cruise missile and their ballistic missile production. Though severely limited, it's perhaps the more lethal of what's inside the Iranian arsenal.
In light of what the president just said within the hour, what comes out of that high-stakes meeting, rare meeting, if you will, with the Syrian president in a few hours? It's supposed to be about stabilizing the Middle East. But in light of these comments, I think even the president would say Middle East not too stable right now.
Well, I think the region is rallying around largely because of the actions of the Iranians themselves, that the destabilizer is the Iranian regime and its proxies. And so the Syrian president's no friend of the Iranians. He's an enemy of them. So I wouldn't be surprised if there's common cause. Maybe even the Turks actually see the light and come on side more aggressively. And you see I guess, a more rallying to constrain and to resist Iran's proxies, its ability to move finances as well as munitions to groups like Hezbollah, which have to transit through Iraq and Syria. So I'm actually more forward to more positive news coming out of Syria, and not so much the stability issue, but certainly rallying against Iran.
Be sure to like and subscribe for all the Fox News latest on YouTube and catch full shows streaming now on Fox One.